Right, now, it was back in October in 1920, not 1920, 2020, that Geoff first visited us because we had George Sansom on that night. And he liked it so much and we liked him so much that he's kept on coming. And today, I'm pleased to announce that Geoff is going to do 3 short sets for us over the course of the evening, and please welcome him to do the first one of those. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Pete. Yes, this is my first time of doing a proper sort of full stint for anyone anywhere, so hope it goes well. So I'll start with one of my favourites. Deja vu, a rhyme. It's impossible to experience deja vu for the first time. I reckon the first time deja vu happens is the second. Deja vu, a rhyme. It's impossible to experience deja vu for the first time. I reckon the first time deja vu happens is the second. I started with verse 2, and verse 1 must stay unlistened, because the first time you say deja vu, it isn't. But then, to get a little more immersed, you can't experience deja vu twice, because you never experienced it first. To recap, deja vu, a rhyme. I know what you're thinking. This is not the first time. 3 times and still it isn't true. How do you qualify? What do you have to do? How do you climb this mountain? Or you may think it just a hillock. You may think this man is a philosopher. You may think this man is a pillock. I've been called a pillock before. Strange, but true. When I hear the word pillock, to me, it's deja vu, a rhyme. It's impossible to experience deja vu for the first time. There again, and this is interesting, there are those who say deja vu is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Then they say it again. And, at the risk of being a bore, if you go back to the first time deja vu happened, you'll think, that's happened before. We should explore the supernatural, put knowledge in place of mere feeling. Edinburgh University has a chair for the paranormal. They can't get it down off the ceiling. Too many gaps in our understanding. Is time travel a thing of the past? What was the best thing before sliced bread? How long does this poem last? Are Blackpool hallucinations real? But to return as to an old friend, deja vu, the end. Well, yes, thank you for asking me to perform for you this evening. As Pete said, 9 months I've been coming along as an artist guest, and so yeah, I'm really enjoying this evening. So I shall keep getting messages on my screen there. Great news! The X Factor is being cancelled. Now, a friend of mine, Rob Barrett, he's a performance poet born up in Dudley and now lives in Cornwall, and wrote this poem, which I think sums up my feelings towards daytime television and all these programmes very well. I was watching a daytime quiz show, I think ITV2. It was chock full of celebrities, none of whom I knew. I didn't know the TV stars or the smiley host, because I'd never watched their reality shows that people love the most. No, I didn't know the programmes' names or the channel they were on, but I didn't know not knowing could be such terrific fun. Yes, I really love not knowing who anybody is. I don't know the contestants who says he's in showbiz. I love not knowing who he is or even his blooming name, because I don't watch that crap that gave that chap his dubious claim to fame. No, I don't watch TV shows beginning with "The Only Way Is." I don't watch mindless waffle caked in ever-thickening layers. I don't watch dating programmes and not one single soap. Love Island wants me for a guest. They haven't got a hope. I don't watch entertainment fronted by an unknown actor. I hate Britain's Got Talent, The Voice and The X Factor. I don't know who the judges are. I hate chefs on TV. I hate all the competitors, and I think that they'd hate me. I hate that smug narrator. I hate the fake tearjerkers. I hate the old sob stories. And I hate the media circus. I don't know him, I don't know her. Who is that so-called star? I don't care a bit, I'm a grumpy old git, and I don't know who you are. I slag them off all evening till my purple face is red. These wannabes and nobodies, they're doing in me head. If it says the word celebrity, I click on the remote, and a little bit of sick comes up and lodges in my throat. I ought to watch some drama, or maybe a documentary, Blue Planet 2, or Doctor Who, or an old Sale of the Century. And then I'd know who everybody was, and I'd know why they were famous. I wouldn't have to be a tetchy TV ignoramus. But I love not knowing who they are. I wallow in oblivion. I shout and rant at the goggle box and offer my opinion. I wouldn't get the sheer delight of swearing at the screen, or experience the frisson of shouting things obscene. So, call me nasty, a boring old fart. I don't care if you do, because I like to sit and watch TV and shout out, "Bloomin' who?" Now, Rob Barrett was a school teacher before he got into his poetry, and I quite like educational poems. So here is a bit of unclear physics for you. The element administerium originally had no protons, no electrons, and only one neutron, but it grew, and now has 5 deputy neutrons, 17 vice neutrons, 20 deputy vice neutrons, and 500 clerical neutrons too. It grew by attracting morons, particles which tend to group, often in pairs, called scrotons, which are sometimes found floating in soup. But to speak of particles pairing is theoretical, so to speak, as is the literal meaning of particle, which is part of a testicle. It's Greek. Greek is the language of science, as you may realise, as in paramedics who give general first aid, and parabolics who specialise. Administerium has a half-life of 2 years, but it does not decay. It's been found that it holds regular reviews, during which the vice neutrons move around. Their motion follows the theory of relativity, which, as you'll also realise, states that the neutrons related to those at the top are the ones most likely to rise. The moron too is active and can find a higher place, upon rolling up its trouser leg, at which point it becomes a mason. At these times there are constant collisions, moron against moron will knock, creating useless energy, and one ion, the eye on the clock. Administerium expands to fill space and time, and having filled each dimension, is said to have reached its critical mess, the time taken being the inefficient of expansion. Any reaction in which administerium is present will take twice as long again. The momentum involved can be shown on a graph, the gradient being the disinclined plane. One property of administerium, observed since man first found it, is its relationship to the element conclusium. It moves in an orbit around it, and the rate at which it approaches other particles is halved during each of its half-lives, so that every 2 years it gets halfway there, but never actually arrives. The inert nature of administerium has already briefly been happed on. It belongs with other inert gases, tedium, xerox, stroll on, write on, and crapton. Its infinite capacity of reflection and retraction, for rendering all things unable, was discovered by Mendeleev, who said, "I've got a periodic table." It's a catalyst for the zinc without trace elements, antipathy, bismol, and more compounds such as calcium hibernate and ammonium till 4:30. It's reached new concepts in maths, pi in the sky, no to the power of 10, or, in scientific terms, not bloody alkali. The first law of unclear physics, as this study of this element is known, is that energy can neither be destroyed nor created, just saved till it's time to go home. This sudden flow of energy, first noted in Mendelev's articles, was at first thought to be the release of travel ions, but is in fact a stream of accelerated particles. The second law of unclear physics is that like buses attract, and by the time they've achieved linear motion, they're all completely packed. This concept of magnetism in buses, their grouping in sixes or more, is referred to in unclear physics as going Ohm's law. Sorry. The third and final law states, no matter how much energy you spend, no process involving a ministerium is ever going to. Thank you. I don't write anything. I pinch from all sorts of various sources and different people. And so from the surreal mind of Les Barker, go into something else surreal. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toads did gyre and gimble in the wabe, or mimsy with the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jubjub bird and shun the frumious bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the manxome foe he sought. So rested he by the tumtum tree, and stood a while in thought. And, as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock, with eyes of flames, came whiffling through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through, the vorpal blade went snecker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O frabjous day, Callooh, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toads did gyre and gimble in the wabe, or mimsy with the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. If you've ever been into a care home or anywhere that helps less able people, you may have seen these chairs dotted around, which have buttons on the side that help to elevate the person sat in them, making it easier to stand up. There was a news story around that one of these chairs had developed a bit of a fault, and Richard Stilgoe, who I admire quite a lot of his material, came up with something about one of these going wrong. The Bower in Bexhill-on-Sea provides a quiet life for people who are shattered after years of mortal strife. A care home for the elderly where no one seems to care. But recently, the test bed for the Caithness self-lift chair. The patron and the matron, one a major, one a nurse, think old ladies are appalling, and old men are even worse. They need helping, they need lifting, and there isn't cash to spare. So they've swapped a girl called Tricia for the Caithness self-lift chair. The old folks at the Bower all liked Tricia. She was nice. She listened to their stories, though she'd heard them once or twice. But now she's gone, the lounge is quiet, the inmates sit and stare, till suddenly a noise comes from the Caithness self-lift chair. Mrs. Mould is not what social services called sprightly. She just sat and watched Countdown and shouted at Richard Whiteley. But suddenly she's flying in a shower of underwear, propelled across the ceiling by the Caithness self-lift chair. The others watch her progress as her mighty knickers snag on the sharp and dusted antlers of a taxidermied stag. They exchange conspiring glances. Can they do it? Do they dare? For the Bower bought a dozen of the Caithness self-lift chair. They open all the windows, move the chairs across the floor, apart from one which Mrs. Thomas jams against the door. Each one sits and faces freedom and says a silent prayer. Lord, carry me away now on my Caithness self-lift chair. One by one, the chairs spring into life, and pensioners are hurled across the cliffs of Bexhill to return to the real world. Mrs. Roberts' chute has opened. She's landed on the beach. She's joined by all the others. They enjoy a wine gum each. They unfold their pack-up zimmers, and they turn to face the bower, and they shout out, "Sod off, matron!" in a voice of awesome power. The inmates of the bower, free from care and free as air, unchained from sheltered living by the Caithness self-lift chair. Thank you. In the days of old California, in the days of the rule by Spain, we knew of many figures of legend. Of those many, just one will remain. Some call me Don Diego. I come like a knife from the gloom. You'll see the flash of my rapier. You'll hear a sound from one side of the room. I am the man they call Mono. I bring hope to the poorer, the weaker. Fear not, for Mono is coming, but only out of one speaker. I leave a large letter M engraved on some prominent panel. Vengeance will be mine, but only in the left channel. I have grace, I have charm when I speak. I have rhyme, I have cadence and meter. I'm a civilized man at his peak, but I'm short of one woofer and tweeter. Can't you trace that mysterious humming? Does the future seem blacker and bleaker? Fear not, for Mono is coming, but only out of one speaker. Mono, a man you can trust. For a tyrant there's nowhere to hide. I'm on the side of the just, and what's more, I'm just on one side. I was made on the loom of the night, with justice my warp and my weft. I will ride out for whatever is right. That's me over there on the left. The sound of some drums can be numbing, and melodians could be a mite meeker. Fear not, for Mono is coming, but only out of one speaker. Here I stand, your friendly avenger, the man with one channel switched off. Everyone knows when I'm here, except maybe Vincent van Gogh. I carve a large letter M, and into the night I am gone. Oh, I always do it upside down. The fools, they're searching for 1-0. From the herd of the horsemen of hunger, I will ride with a large chicken tikka. Fear not, for Mono is coming, but only out of one speaker. I wear the mask of an outlaw, that none may look on my face. But you know, at the first sign of treble, I'll come riding out from my base. I will ride out for Juan and Juanita. There is nothing that Mono can't fix. Is there a guitar in the Monita? Is the banjo too high in the mix? I am a saviour of man and of woman. Be joyful and cry out, Eureka! Fear not, for Mono is coming, but only out of one speaker. So, as quite a few of you know, I'm on the committee of Bromsgrove Folk Club, and when I've performed that at the club, our sound man Chris has had great fun switching me between left and right channels on the speakers. I'd now like to bring you a lovely romantic story. Joyce the Librarian, strict vegetarian, 40, living with mum, wears sandals and glasses, attends evening classes, and wonders if romance will come. Though she'd never been kissed, it's not something she'd missed until some weeks before, when George, a Rotarian, handsome Lotharian, walked through the library door. George was unmarried, and the torch that Joyce carried was burning a hole in her heart. She wanted to show him, but didn't yet know him. She didn't know where to start. So with growing abhorrence, she read D.H. Lawrence to glean a few ideas, which she turned down flat. She couldn't do that, not in a million years. Joyce, the librarian, strict vegetarian, was burning with animal lust, alarming sensations, strange palpitations, a mix of delight and disgust. So she busied herself rearranging the shelf to try to control her dreams. Joyce the Librarian, the disciplinarian, was falling apart at the seams. The very next day she kept out of the way when George returned his books, but with growing conviction she wandered through fiction and threw him some longing looks. And when George joined the queue, she knew what to do. She smiled and removed her specs, then looked in horror, for he'd come to borrow the further joy of sex. Perhaps because latterly she'd read Lady Chatterley, something just snapped in her head. She gave herself gladly, wildly, madly to George that night in his bed. But then, just as she'd feared, George disappeared, some other librarian to woo. Now there's a sob in her voice, as both book and Joyce are a fortnight overdue. Another one there from Richard Stilgo and Peter Skellen. When we did the song challenge here at Northwich a couple of months ago, Steve and Brenda sponsored me to do the Spot Was Not Like the Rest poem. And on one of the posts, he put any chance of Spot this evening. But I thought I'd change my spots. As you plough through the snows of December, remember that poor Captain Scott. Wasn't he the second to reach the South Pole? Well, no, in fact, he was not. Roald Amundsen, he was the first. Well, that's what everyone reckoned. We'd all been under a misapprehension. I've been told that Roald was second. When he arrived at his goal, a small patch of yellow snow marked it. For who was the first to the pole? Spot of the Antarctic. It was an elementary mistake that put Roald out of the hunt. How can a man on the back of the sledge beat the dog he has tied to the front? But Spot was not a happy dog. A dog needs to go out for a run. But pulling a sledge all those miles through the snow, a walk round the park would have done. A sledge piled high with a cooker, a fridge, a TV, and who had to cart it? It wasn't Roald that trudged through the cold, it was Spot of the Antarctic. Of course, Roald did all the planning. Strategy flowed from his mouth. Which way shall we go today, Roald? Said Spot, and Roald said, South. And on the return journey, his keen mind again proved its worth. Which way shall we go today, Roald? Said Spot, and Roald said, North. All Spot had to do was pull the sledge, put up the tent, and when it got dark, it was whose job to cook Roald's supper? Spot of the Antarctic. My name used to be Ronald, said Roald, but alas, I was a poor man. I had to sell my own N to finance the trip. I sold it to someone called Orman. I bought a tent and a sledge and a dog and set out to do it. Spot didn't like the Antarctic at first, but he's taken a Viking to it. I thought I'd be first to the pole. I got off the sledge and then parked it. I wanted to be first. My heart's going to burst. It was Spot of the Antarctic. Then halfway through the journey home, he spoke to his pet with regrets. I've miscalculated. Our food is all ated, and McDonald's haven't opened here yet. Not for Roald, the example of Oates, no bravely going out for a walk. He simply shouted, Here, Spot, and got out his knife and fork. The dog may be gone, but his legend lives on. Down through the years dogs have barked it. For who was the first to the pole? Spot of the Antarctic. Sticking with the Southern Hemisphere theme, something completely different. I don't like my boomerang. I know what you're going to say. If you hate your boomerang so much, then why don't you throw it away? Well, that's all very well in theory. It may seem that simple to you. Why don't you throw your boomerang away? Because I threw it away yesterday too. There are times when life is not easy. There are days when the future looks black. There are days when you throw your boomerang. There are days when your boomerang comes back. I believe in predestination. My boomerang's future is clear. On the days that I throw my boomerang away, its predestination's back here. There are times it gets me down. Perhaps I shouldn't let it. But what I can't understand is this. How did I ever get it? Sometimes, when in the front garden, I throw it, then hurry indoors. Within half an hour, there's a ring on the bell, and a little boy says, "Is this yours?" Once I got really angry, and I taped some dynamite to it, and without really thinking things through, I lit the fuse, and then threw it. With hindsight, this was an error. We learn lessons from life. I was taught it. It is better to think before throwing your boomerang. Never think after you've caught it. I've resorted to desperate measures. Sometimes, when I throw the stick, I try to remove house before it comes back. But you can't get a mortgage that quick. I had a Jack Russell Terrier once. I used to call him Jack. I used to throw my boomerang for him. The stick used to bring the dog back. I've seen the sticker in car windows. It gets me right here like a knife. A boomerang is not just for Christmas. A boomerang is for life.
Clever.
Nice one, Geoff.
As you can tell, I like sort of quite daft poems and things that sort of appeal to my daft sense of humour and things. But sometimes I come across poems which are more serious and sort of hit the spot there. This one, I'd love to credit who it's by. I have no idea. It was just one I found on the internet when looking for something altogether different. You are not your age, nor the size of the clothes you wear. You are not a weight or the colour of your hair. You are not your name or the dimples in your cheeks. You are all the books you have read and the words that you speak. You are your croaky morning voice and the smiles you try to hide. You're the sweetness in your laughter and every tear you've cried. You're the songs you sing so loudly when you know that you're alone. You're the places that you've been to and the one that you call home. You're the things that you believe in and all the people that you love. You're the photos in your bedroom and the future you dream of. You're made of so much beauty, but it seems that you forgot when you decided that you were defined by all the things you're not.
Brilliant. Thank you, Geoff.
And my last one of this session. Roll up, cried the ringmaster. See the man on the flying trapeze, the one we've just fitted with elastic. That's him over there in the trees. Where's Cosmo, the fairly accurate knife thrower? The girl with the baby said. Her name was Lucille. They knew Cosmo'd know her. She still had the knife in her head. He's back there in the procession, said the ringmaster, pointing to an old half-timbered Morris. It's Cosmo, the fairly accurate knife thrower, and his lovely assistant, Doris. Lucille stormed up to him in anger, gave him the baby. He didn't resist. Shamed by the memory of the night she'd conceived, he'd aimed for her sister and missed. Little did she know the child Cosmo gained on that morning's Morris Traveller ride would become the world-famous stuntman, Evil Shitmeevil and his Yamashita 125. He grew up a child of the circus, rode the Big Dipper, the Dodgems, the Ghost Train, with Cosmo, the fairly accurate knife thrower, and his lovely assistant, Elaine. Once upon a time they kept marine mammals, but everyone was agin it, and now the pool stands empty. There isn't any porpoise in it. Evil set the animals free, because that's what he knew they would wish. You can't keep animals in cages these days, and it never worked that well with the fish. And soon he was the star of the circus, the Morris traveller still travelling on, with Cosmo, the fairly accurate knife thrower, and his lovely assistant, Yvonne. Poor Cosmo was on the decline. He was hitting the Boddington's loopy juice, and in one afternoon hit 2 lovely assistants, 4 passers-by, and a migrating Canada goose. But his circus was making a fortune, and the audiences willingly paid it, to see Evil leap over 36 National Front members, and cheered when he never quite made it. And before he got out the ring, the next act would kill 2 or 3. It was Cosmo, the fairly accurate knife thrower, and his lovely assistant, Marie. And the climax of Evil's career was announced with fanfare and fuss. He'd leap over 42 motorbikes in a corporation double-decker bus. It was on the 189 to Stockport that Evil set out after his dream. Drove at 75 miles an hour down Wellington Road North towards the Little Sisters of the Poor formation motorbike team. Some say the big lady on the back stood up, but they found a puncture in the front wheel and a knife inscribed, "To Cosmo, the fairly accurate knife thrower, from his lovely assistant, Lucille." Well, thank you very much, and thank you to everyone who's performed this evening. Great to have so many along, and especially to people who've come along. I think just because I'm here, certainly Sid, Colin, Wendy, and I think Mel are all first-timers that I know. The only thing is, I got a bit confused, really. I thought I was coming to a cookery class. So I'm going to read you a recipe. Now, all of these that you'll hear are places in England and Wales. So listen, and you'll probably spot some of these. Takeley, Appleby, Plumley, Cheriton, Purton and Canterlot Mellenby, Washington, Cutmill, Unstone, Ingo Bowl and Masham, Pickwell, Blueberry, Gooseberry, Shawbury, Shrewsbury, Blackborough and Clamberis, Tipton, Shallow Bowls and Churn. Watchet Caerphilly, Wendy Mould, Outwell, Wendy Seapooling Wormington or Crawley Bugthorpe, kill 'em and bin 'em. Findon Knutsford, Hazel Beach and Cheshunt, Cracow Pen and Chopwell, Bowling Hunning, Runnymede and Melton Cadbury, then Sturton and Licky End, Addingham, Dimble Salt and St Pinchbeck Curry, then Panall and Mixbury Evenly, Makeworth Doton, Fleur, Buttercram and Egham, Henlade, and Beatham, Allfold and Needham, then Rollright Thingwell and Coverham Puddington, Lightthorn Furnace Chimney and Burntwood Heat and Oven, Duncookham, Bakeup, Bakewell, Butley Doynton Burnham, Wrexham, Wensbury Dunnington, Ticton Tockworth Tring, Orpington Ovenden Great, Monmouth Pyeworthy over Kingston, for Mumby, Chewsley, Wembley, Thursley, Fridaythorpe, Thatcham Dayton and Sunderland. Ainho, at Teestame, Kettlesing, Earl Grey's once brewed, Ham Sandwich in Toaster, then Clothall over Tabley, Calder Vale, and Carrington Hot and Dishforth over Tabley, Addingham Clotton Milkham, and Rosebery Topping, at Lastingham, Tanton Tatterford, Reading. Wait be, there's Morecambe, Fetcham Glasson, and Felton Brimton Beer, beer made of ale. Callingham Hungerford Guestover, yelling Coombe Gedding, Askham Richard, Askham Brian, Pattishall Wantage, and Sittingbourne Downham. Sevington Pye and Plateford, Devizes and Passenham Round, hey! Begin Hill Eton, Wilden Tastely Dar Liston, Chewin and Swallow, Butley Noke Burpham, or Belchford, or Trumpington, Decorum Mattersea, Fulford Tumbley, Goodley, if Tirely, then to Charing Cross and Napwell, Little Snoring, Remenham, Maidburnt House, or Too Much Hadham, or Nuneaton, Nuneaton, Shirley Nottingham, A Donyat slinging Minskip, Tinwell, and selling on elite T-Bay. Unthank, Hawkesworth, Clapham.
Brilliant.
So that was actually the first poem that I ever performed live anywhere at Bromsgrove Folk Festival back in 2015, and yeah, it's been one of my favourites, that one. Now, we heard earlier about Joyce the Librarian, and now here's a poem about her nemesis. She was alone inside the library. She looked at some books and then took some, slipping the paperbacks inside her bra. She came out, looking library booksome. Her breasts spoke volumes as she passed the librarian, as she whispered good night and smiled sweetly. Outwardly calm, but beneath her young charm, her heart beating fast underneath Dennis Wheatley. She's Lorna, the library book burglar. She steals books and she can't control it. It started when she saw Teach Yourself Kleptomania. She read the first chapter, then stole it. One day, a randy librarian stopped for a good look at Lorna's. He'd seen big ones, minute ones, some black ones, some cute ones, but he'd never seen breasts with four corners. He grabbed her by the exit. In panic, she cried out, "Police!" With his rough-hewn right fist, he felt Agatha Christie, while his left closed around War and Peace. She's Lorna, the library book burglar. She's randy and very well read. She's hidden James Joyce in the place of his choice, and she keeps Poe under the bed. He thought he was in for a treat, but the poor lad was counting his chickens. She cried out, "It's false, boy, it's not Tit, it's Tolstoy," and she need him in the Monica Dickens. She's a pair of oversized bloomers called her Encyclopedia Britannica knickers, and while Erica Rowe did her one-woman show, she stole 2,000 programmes from Twickers. She's Lorna, the library book burglar, and her breasts, they are angular still. Half of her charms are a farewell to arms, and her left one is John Stuart Mill. Then she met the man of her dreams in an evening of moonlight and wine. They were meant for each other. He was all bound in leather, and he had his name written all down his spine. She took her new love to her flat, and she offered her breasts and her hips. Oh, such sweet surrender, the prisoner of Zenda, and a handful of Jane's fighting ships. She's Lorna, the library book burglar. She's fooled us all with her skill at what you think is Lorna's house of Pooh Corner, and don't ask where she keeps Fanny Hill. There was a comment in the chat a little while ago by Stephen Brendan mentioning Parliament. This one was written, again, anonymous, a few years ago, and I'm sure you may recognise a few MPs, if not by name, by what they did. I want a floating duck house. I want to clear my moat. I need to mend my tennis court. That's why I need your vote. I have to build a portico. My swimming pool needs mending. My lovely plants need horse manure, and the Arga needs much tending. A chandelier is vital. Mock Tudor boards are great. My hanging baskets won awards, and I've earned a tax rebate. I need a glitter toilet seat. My piano so needs tuning. Maltesers help me stay awake, and my orchard must need pruning. I could have said the rules were wrong, and often thought I should, but somehow it was easier to profit all I could. The public really have to see that the rules are there to test, and by defrauding taxpayers, we were merely doing our best. The Speaker of the House has gone, our sacrificial beast, but the public are still praying for our corpses at the feast. What do the public want from us, those vote-wielding ingrates? They really should be grateful to be financing our estates. The message is so very clear, we're merely learning late, that the British way of living well is to screw the bleeding state. I know Colin, who joined us earlier, he previously has been the bookings person for the Moira Furnace Folk Festival. He does a few crossover poems, so I know this is one that he does. It's one I enjoy. On a cold, rainy night on the Liverpool quayside in the years before the Great War, the world was in shock at the loss of Titanic, so proud had they been days before. Relatives gathered for news of their loved ones, to read through the list of the dead, when into the throng came a sad-eyed old polar bear, and to the clerk at the counter he said, "Have you got any news of the Iceberg? My family were on it, you see. Have you got any news of the Iceberg? They mean the whole world to me. My wife and my children were coming from Greenland to be by my side in the zoo. Belinda's my wife, and the eldest's called Bernard, and Billy, well, he's only 2. I know on the ship there were hundreds of people, and I know that the iceberg's not yours." The polar bear's eyes held the start of his teardrops as he covered his face with his paws. "Have you got any news of the iceberg? My family were on it, you see. Have you got any news of the iceberg? They mean the whole world to me. It's been over a year since I last saw my children. I left home to build a career. I've worked very hard. I'm the star in the circus. It's all been for nothing, I fear. There's my face on the poster. We're in town this week. My children were meeting me here." Everyone watched as he struggled to speak, as his paw brushed away one more tear. "Have you got any news of the iceberg? My family were on it, you see. Have you got any news of the iceberg? They mean the whole world to me." By now all the people had gathered beside him. His grief was one they could share. The people around him, in silence and sadness, listened to the sad polar bear. "I wanted my children to see me performing, and Belinda, she would have been proud." At last, lost for words, his tears flowing freely, the question was asked by the crowd. "Have you got any news of the iceberg? My family were on it, you see. Have you got any news of the iceberg? They mean the whole world to me." And sticking with a watery theme, The Ancient Mariner, that lovely long poem that should last about another 3 hours, so I hope you're sitting comfortably. "It is an ancient mariner, and he stoppeth one of 3, by thy long grey beard and glittering eye. Now wherefore stopp'st thou me? The bridegroom's doors are open wide, and I am next of kin. The guests are met, the feast is set, mayst hear the merry din." He holds him with his skinny hand. "Take thou this CD-ROM. Look at me now, and know my name, ancientmariner.com. Our course was set across the net, the old man told his tale. The good ship Internet Explorer weighed anchor and set sail. With sloping masts and dipping prow, we headed south, quoth he. Our sails were full, our modem fast, across the rolling sea. And far astern, a distant speck, the home page departed from, till the gods browsed and selected ancientmariner.com. The wedding guests they chose me, and they cursed me then because I'd happed upon the website of a man named Albert Ross. He was noted for his wingspan and his wanderings as well. He had a Power Mac, his ISP was AOL. Oh gods, ye could have chosen any Harry, Dick or Tom. You moved your mouse and clicked on ancientmariner.com. My PC crashed, my cursor froze, no sight nor sound nor motion, as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. My RAM was full of spam, and my printer's out of ink. Oh, wedding guests, I searched for peace, I cut and pasted home in MS Word, but no one heard ancientmariner.com. I swung the mouse hard starboard, but the helm did not respond. Me comport was disconnected, only blackness lay beyond. I gazed into despair, I drifted helpless to defeat. I spake the sad man's mantra, Control, Alt, Delete. Wedding guests, go to my homepage, say goodbye to Dad and Mum. Tell my friends I'm out there somewhere. ancientmariner.com.
Great.
And my last one, this again goes back to Richard Stilgo, going back to 1993. But you look at what he says, and yes, it's makes you think about what we do to the planet. The very first music that anyone heard was the song of the bird, which of course is absurd, for nobody heard the song of that bird, for nobody yet had occurred. But then man came along, and he heard the bird's song, and he got it all wrong. For he took a bamboo, and he blew, and the air went straight through. So he took a firm grip, and he tightened his lip, and the bamboo let rip. Soon he found the sound could be ordered around. If he made his lip tighter, the note grew in height. If he made a few holes, he could play barcarolles. Pretty preludes as well, any tune you could want, like Moonlight in Vermont or the Liberty Bell. So the very next music was played on his flute. It was nice, it was cute. So he then followed suit with the brass and the strings and more intricate things, and the music that followed was innocent, free, and chirpy and cheerful, and mostly in C. Man got clever, his hand, tired of working the land. He learned how to make steam, and he started to dream of beam engines and schemes where he dammed all the streams, bent the world to his will, and he built the first mill. It belched smoke and power, black dirt and white flour, and his ambitions grew every hour. He picked up the world and he ground it to powder, and so the next music was grander and louder, more capable, complex, less folksy and pretty, with less of the countryside, more of the city. With more of the metal and less of the woods, man thought the next music was pretty darn good. He dug the world's coal and he set it on fire, and he drilled the world's oil and the fire burned higher. He muddied the clouds and he crudded the ground, and he studied the sea with the blackened and drowned. He fashioned the train and created the car, the tractor, the toaster, the home whirlpool spar. And this genius at last, in a final crescendo, gave civilization the Super Nintendo. Now Marios were super and hedgehogs were sonic, and bleepers and bloopers sang songs electronic. Their drum kits went pish and their pixels went pip, for the very next music was sung by this chip. Outside the sea blackened and all nature died, but man didn't care, he was safely inside. Day in and day out, every day he would bend over Game Boy, Sega, and the faithful Nintendo. He spun, flew, and kicked each Street Fighter to death. In the real world outside, no one dared take a breath. But he never went out. It was not bright and clean, like the primary colours he saw on his screen. The black sky outside let in no glimpse of heaven. So what? He was hot. He'd got level 7. Who cared that the air was all laden with grot? The screen said, "Mankind, you're a genius." Not. And the birds tried to sing through the oil on their beaks, but oil, as is well known, is there to stop squeaks. And the very last music, which nobody heard, was the song of the very last bird. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Thank you for... So this last one then is originally written as a message of, I guess, acceptance, hope from a parent to a child. So I'll say stay safe and well. Thank you for listening, and I'll leave this one with you. We've cleared off the table, the leftovers saved, washed the dishes and put them away. I've told you a story and tucked you in tight at the end of your knockabout day. As the moon sets its sails to carry you to sleep over the midnight sea, I will tell you a tale no one told to me. May it keep you good company. You can be anybody you want to be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country where your heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself. You can gather friends around. You can choose one special one. And the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. There are girls who grow up strong and bold. There are boys quiet and kind. Some race on ahead, some follow behind, some go in their own way and time. Some women love women, some men love men, some raise children, some never do. You can dream all the day, never reaching the end of everything possible for you. Don't be rattled by names, by taunts, by games, but seek out spirits true. If you give your friends the best part of yourself, they will give the same back to you. You can be anybody you want to be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country where your heart leads. And know, I will love you still. Thank you very much.
Aww.
Thank you, Geoff.